Hello, my name is Philip Bloom. I'm a UK-based director of photography and director. And for the past year, I've been using the Canon DSLRs as my main cinematography tool. One of the main advantages, and certainly why I've embraced the Canon DSLRs and why many thousands of people across the world have embraced them, is ignoring the fact that it takes stills, because it is effectively a stills camera with a video function. What it does, it has brought large sensor video cameras to an affordable price, which prior to these cameras coming out just did not exist. And not only are they affordable, they're really affordable, and they're in nice small packages. I mean, we're being filmed right now on is it a 5D?
Yep.
On a 5D, and you know, people probably think he's just taking a still of me, but he's not. He's doing an interview. You are capable of capturing incredibly cinematic images, especially the 5D has a chip bigger than any video camera currently on the market that shoots full HD. And we're talking about Reds, we're talking about F-35s, we're talking about Genesis. None of them have a sensor which come close to the 5D. That's what makes the Canon 5D in itself unique. And that is the first camera that came out, and that is what captured everybody's imagination. And since then, we've had the 7D and the 1D Mark IV, and the Rebel T2i or 550D in Europe. And all of these cameras capture incredibly amazing images. But it's one of these things, just because you've got a great camera doesn't mean you're going to create great images. It always comes down to the talent behind the camera. What I feel that these cameras do is they have democratized filming, in that they have put the tools into everybody's hands who wants them, and let's see how they can use them. So it's not like large sensor cameras now are only just for people who can afford them. You can go into your local electrical store or your local camera store and buy a camera which you can shoot a movie on and make it look incredibly cinematic. All it comes down to now is you knowing what you're doing behind it, making sure you've got the content for it. So that's what it's done. It's democratized filmmaking. It's freed up filmmaking from the constraints of big, bulky cameras and created them into these nice small bodies. Like everything in life, there's always a downside to the upsides. The upsides are enormous. You know, we have the size, we have the price, we have the sensor. The downsides, these are stills cameras with a video function, so they have not been optimized for video. The video function is almost like a side extra feature. Certainly on the 5D when it was brought out, it was a little extra feature they put in there thinking nobody will be interested in this, but we can do it anyway, so let's put it in there. Canon themselves were completely shocked by how enormous the take-up was of these cameras. And so when they put these features in, they weren't so concerned about some of the issues that us filmmakers have with the cameras. First off, I have talked about the size, and it's lovely and small and it's wonderful, but ergonomically it's very difficult to shoot with straight out of the box, even though we are currently being shot straight out of the box with no accessories whatsoever, using these elbows as a tripod, and it seems to be working fine. Now that's fine, but I would recommend, you know, using things like, you've got to get accessories to stabilize it, tripods, monopods, handheld rigs, because one of the biggest issues we have from this is the rolling shutter artifacts that the CMOS sensor within the camera gives you. It's certainly one of the worst CMOS artifacting that I've seen. And CMOS artifacting is simply, or the rolling shutter is when you have, I'm sure we can demonstrate it if you do some slight whip pan to left and right, you'll see that it's a slightly wobbly image and the vertical is no longer vertical. And that's simply a byproduct of the rolling shutter, which captures the image within the frame from the top to bottom within each frame. The other thing that it does is it has a very large sensor inside that camera. So, you know, it's like a 5K sensor. And what it needs to do, it needs to give us a 1080p recording. Now, in an ideal world, Canon would have created some beautiful logarithmic algorithm way of scaling down the image to creating a perfect 1080p image. But they haven't done that. What they've simply done is they have all of these lines of detail, and it records one line, throws away 3 lines, records another line, throws away another 3 lines. So it's chucking away information, and by throwing away that information, it's creating some other issues that we are particularly annoyed with, and those are called aliasing and moire issues. Aliasing is something we've come across with video for a long time, depending on certain cameras, and some are worse than others, but the aliasing in particular on the Canon DSLRs is quite bad, and that's something you need to think about when shooting. And it comes simply down to costumes, where you position the camera, making sure that things which create aliasing and moire, certainly things which have any sort of patterning, are just limited. But the weird thing is, you could shoot a brick wall, for example. Brick walls are one of the key things which look terrible in a wide, deep depth of field shot using one of these cameras. But if you move maybe 2 or 3 foot further forward, suddenly it's no longer giving you moire issues. And as long as you're using a monitor to actually monitor this, you can see this. If you go 2 or 3 foot or a couple of meters back, suddenly, again, it's fine, but there is a point where it will moire, and there's points where it won't. So it comes down to literally experimenting with your positioning of the camera to limit those artifacts. Or, the even simpler thing to do is just have them out of focus. So have something in frame, such as a character, and the brick wall may be behind them, but as long as the brick wall is out of focus and they're in focus, you'll be fine. We've had it with TV for years. We've had it with people wearing check shirts or certain patterned jackets, start giving these horrible fuzzy patterns. It's just that this camera is more susceptible to it. I would say rolling shutter, aliasing, moire, they're the key things, and the other one is the codec that it records in. H.264, which is a beautiful finishing codec, great for publishing stuff on the web, terrible format to record in. It does create really quite compressed images. It's relatively high bit rates if you compare it to something like an EX1, but it's still pretty compressed, and a lot of the high-end broadcasters in the HD world, we're talking like the BBC HDs and Discovery HDs, are a little bit reticent, or very reticent, about taking Canon as full acquisition formats. But that is if you stick the camera in front of a chart. And I'm one of these cinematographers who are very much about, if it looks good to my eye on the big screen, and we've literally just been into a big screen, and they've got a 4K projector. We're not outputting 4K, but I've got a beautiful screen there. We've just projected some of my work on there, and it looks fantastic. And that is what is key, is not sticking a camera in front of a chart and going, moire, aliasing. That's not going to work for us. It shoots and captures beautiful images, which are, especially with the 5D, aesthetically unique. And if you can assess that and think, I can live with the issues, it'll look fantastic going out. So with each camera, they are improving it. The aliasing and moire, not sure how they're going to solve that issue without completely recoding the way that they record video. Or we get a raw out, a 5K raw out. Technically impossible right now. Maybe in some future camera it can be possible. And the other key thing that we would like is simply the ability to plug in something like an Archer Key Pro or a Convergent Design Nano Flash into the HDMI out and record a clean image out of there, which we can record in something way better than H.264, like a nice high quality ProRes or something like that, a nice iframe codec, and we'd be very, very happy. I think that is, if they can do one thing to the camera right now, if Canon can do one single improvement, I think the majority of us would say, give us clean HDMI out, and then we get past all of the codec issues and we can record into something that will make broadcasters happy. I'm not sentimental when it comes to what is my favourite camera. I don't have like this camera which I keep locked away, which is the cameras which has created the best images for me. I'm a very progressive cinematographer, and my favourite camera is the camera which has given me the best images. And currently right now, my favourite camera is the 5D Mark II. Come and see me in 10 years time, I'm sure I'll have a different camera, or even a couple of years time I'll have a different camera which is my favourite camera. And maybe I will have an affinity for the 5D Mark II in 30, 40 years time and go, God, do you remember that when that 5D Mark II came out and just how much it changed? Because it really has completely changed the filmmaking industry as we know it. it's a phrase which I use because it really sums it up the most. It really has democratized filmmaking. It's freed up filmmaking and given it to the masses. You could almost consider it like a communist movement within the filmmaking industry. Suddenly everybody can have the tool. It's no longer for the privileged few. Everybody in the street, if they want to be a filmmaker and they've got the skills to know what they do, they have access to the technology and do it. And I think that's a great thing. I think what we're going to find is we're going to have people who would never have been discovered as filmmakers making stuff, and that is all down to this new technology. Sure, they could have used crappy DV cameras or maybe standard EX cameras, but even EX1 type cameras, but they're quite expensive when you think about it. You can buy the Rebel 550D, Canon 550D for, I'm not quite sure how much it is here, but it's certainly in England it's around £800. And to be able to buy a camera with a chip the same size as Red 1 in a camera costs £800. I mean, sure, it's not a Red 1. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles that a Red 1 has, or the resolution, or some of the other things, but it is £800. So I don't look back at the cameras that I've used, certainly in the video world. I don't look back at them and go, I don't pine for them, because what has changed, because I've always been digital. The only time I've ever shot film was with my dad's old Super 8 camera, or as stills. With video, it's just very different to film, because if you talk to cinematographers who've worked in film, they'll have a passion for an Arriflex or some camera that they've used, that they've been using for 20, 30 years. And for them, that's their ultimate camera, and they'll always love that. If you're in the digital world, the cameras are always getting better. We're never going to go and look back and go, do you remember the good old days of U-matic cameras? Do you remember when we had the Betacam SP, when we had to light everything so much because we couldn't see anything? Oh, those good old days. Do you remember when those cameras were really, really heavy and you'd go home and your back would be completely screwed? You don't have that in the digital world, and I guess that's probably why I don't have this sort of like love, particularly of an old camera that I've used in the past. I remember buying my first digital video camera, moving images camera, and that was a Video 8 Sony. I bought that 22 years ago. I'm sure I don't know where it is now, but I'm sure if you gave it to me now and told me to film something with it, I'd look at it and go, you must be kidding me. It doesn't create nice images. At the time it was great, but technology's moved so much since then. I think with the digital market, I think we're always going to get better and better and better. Whereas film kind of reached a plateau many years ago, and it hasn't really moved on from that. And it won't really move on from that, whereas digital is moving on from that. And it's one of the things, we've been doing a number of tests with a company called Takuto based out in Chicago, where we've taken the DSLRs and we've put them up against film to see how well they compare. And one of the key tests that I did was see how well these cameras perform in low light. And that is what has been mind-blowing. We've just literally had a look at some stuff on the big screen, and we looked at some stuff that was shot on the Nikon D3S. We haven't talked much about the Nikons because they're not great as video cameras. They're beautiful stills cameras, but what they do excel at in the video is low light. And we just saw some stuff. It was only 720p, that's all it records. 720p, 24p, and we saw some stuff shot at 2500 ISO. No, sorry, 25,000 ISO, and it was clean. Now with film, you can't go over 1,000. You can push it. You can in processing it, you can push it up a bit. If you get most, it starts getting really, really grainy. We just shot an old guy, with a simple Bic lighter lighting up. His whole hand was blown out instantly as soon as he lit up the lighter. His face was completely overexposed. 25,000 ISO. That is digital technology, and that is what is so amazing, and that is what these cameras are bringing to the market. Some people say that it's difficult to focus with because you've got a large chip, and it can be difficult to focus, and that is why I so recommend buying accessories. Using the camera out of the box and making it work. You can make it work, but it's not ideal. You've got a zoom in function, which you can digital zoom in before you record, and that will help you focus, but that won't help once you hit record because you can't do that. The number one accessory is a viewfinder for the camera, and the one that I recommend is the Z Finder Pro. It doesn't fog up. It simply clips onto the back with you have a frame which goes on the bottom of the camera, and then it sticks on over the LCD. You then stick on your viewfinder. You put it up to your eye, hold it like a video camera, and you can get focus because it's giving you around about an 80 to 90 inch LCD screen in your eye. Other than that, plug in a monitor. Try and do everything off the LCD screen. On anything that moves, you will struggle. Locked off beautiful shots of scenery, not a problem because you can use the zoom in function. But anything that's got any movement in it, get a viewfinder, get a monitor, and you'll have no problems. With the cameras, what lenses? Probably say it depends on what you're shooting. If you're doing hybrid work where you're doing stills and video, then the Canon L series you can't beat because the autofocus works, everything like that works, and they are very high quality. If you're using camera, if you want to shoot just video, I like the Zeiss lenses because they have hard stops and focusing. It has a much longer rotation because they have a very small rotation on the Canons for manual focus. Anybody coming into the video world from the stills world won't really understand this so much, but because we do everything manual when we shoot video. Anybody who says they're a cinematographer and they shoot in auto mode for anything should be ashamed of themselves because it's all manual. It's all about keeping control over exactly what you want. Don't let the camera try and do anything for you because it won't do it very well. And that means white balance, your aperture, your shutter, your ISO, keep it all manual. And then if you've got the money, then you can use cinema glass. Certain cameras, the 7D can be modified to take PL lenses. I'm shooting for Lucasfilm next week on a camera modified by Schmidl in Germany, and we're using Zeiss, very expensive Zeiss glass on there, which is good and it's bad because it's almost like a merging of two worlds. It's a merging of the nice affordable indie world and the more expensive Hollywood style world. Now, if your budget can stretch to highly expensive lenses, then great. They are nice and they are better. Optically, they are obviously going to look a little bit nicer, but are they worth the extra money for what's essentially a 1080p recording? I think it's debatable. If you gave me a set of Cooke S4 lenses, I'd be very grateful. But then you look at the Canon lenses, look at say the 70 to 200 f2.8. Look at that lens in a cinema format, and it will be massive. The still lenses are nice and small and affordable, and they shoot great images. Cinema lenses are very expensive, they're big, and they're heavy. So it really comes on what do you want? Do you want to have a big rig where it ends up looking like a red, or do you want to have a nice compact small camera that you can move around fast and swap out lenses nice and easy? Depends on how you like to shoot. I'm a big proponent of using the Zeiss glass, the stills glass, and the Canon L series glass. I think you can shoot a movie on them absolutely no problem whatsoever. House recently shot their season finale entirely, apart from one small section which is a slow motion section in film. The rest of it, 99.9%, was on 3 Canon 5D Mark IIs, entirely shot using Canon L series glass. They used just the primes. I think they used the 24, the 35, the 50, and the 85 primes. The f1.4 and f1.2s. They used the 50mm f1.0, which they managed to get hold of, and they used the two zooms, 24 to 70 and the 70 to 200, and that's all they shot with, all Canon L series glass. There are issues because the focus wheel doesn't stop, so you need to have a good focus puller who will make sure that they don't go past those marks, but they are totally good enough for shooting with. In fact, I know one person, I totally disagree with this one guy, but he's a bit of an expert in the tech field of these things, and he's a big proponent for using really shitty glass on the Canon cameras, which I find ridiculous, because he thinks it reduces the things like the aliasing and the moire. Personally, totally disagree with him. Don't use shitty glass, use good glass. And the most important thing when shooting with these cameras is, for God's sake, turn down that sharpness to 0 in your picture profile settings. Turn down your contrast to 0, and you'll get a nice flat image which will reduce, and also you'll reduce the aliasing and the moire. It's a very, very simple trick to just making your camera have less digital artifacts and giving you more play in the grade. It's 2 simple things: sharpness all the way off, contrast all the way down as well. Best advice I can give in the picture profile settings.